Talent and contributors.
Apart from the interviewees, the documentary was made entirely on my own. Mode of address. I used an indirect mode of address, attempting to reduce any ties to specific genders, ethnicities, etc. This is because I wanted to make it purely an informational piece affecting people of different genders and ethnicities. As for ages, I wanted to target a younger audience, as they may be more interested in this kind of content about schooling systems,
as it is affecting people similar to them, no matter where it is around the globe.
As for documentary modes and styles, expository and participatory modes were used. As for locations, the interviews were filmed indoors using a Google Meet as the visual style. In hindsight, a traditional 3-point lighting setup may have been better. I chose to use the video call style as I had planned to interview another person, but in the end stuck to one interviewee. I thought the varying interview styles would interfere with each other, but it probably would have been better if I just did it normally. As for the B-roll, it was filmed at a local public school. In terms of video tech, webcams were used along with the DSLR camera with video capabilities. The webcams were used during the interview, and the DSLR cameras were used during the shooting of B-roll. As for audio tech, the school's sound booth was utilized, allowing for audio without too much background noise. As for lighting tech, no particular lighting technology was used during the interview or B-roll. The B-roll was not lit artificially because I wanted it to feel real. The interview did not use proper 3-point lighting or other lighting setups, as I wanted it to feel real and raw rather than a professional piece. It needs to feel more like an actual in-person kind of
atmosphere
with actual people who are experiencing these systems. Technical competencies. For the interview, I should have hooked up a camera like a DSLR one from the school to the computer, using that camera as a webcam during the interview. This would prevent the camera angle from moving from the optimal position as seen during the interview. This would also increase the overall video quality. As for the animation, it is generally okay, but there are a lot of areas that are stale. Something that would improve these areas would be adding more motion and more color, so more variations of color. So some scenes are just a blue background with black lines, whereas something more interesting would have blue, red, white, and some other colors mixed in. Transferring and storing files. I had a folder where all the animation, B-roll, and interview footage was being stored. This made things much easier for me to coordinate as my video went through multiple different stages with different timelines and project files. I used DaVinci Resolve as my editing software. This allowed me to quickly gain access to my files even though I changed projects and the bin management system would need to be remade every single time. Bins. I only used bins in the main project file as I needed a way to separate my interview, animation, and B-roll files. This made things much easier, as I could fine-tune the animation lengths and duration without the interview footage getting in the way too much. Next time, I might just not use the bins and increase the number of passes I do with the video. This reduces lag and also replaces bins. However, this would be more suited for an animated video, not necessarily a live-action one where the B-roll and interview footage would need to be accessed side by side. By more passes, I mean that the video would be rendered more times and then imported as new timelines into new project files. Timeline and sequence. I only used one timeline per project. However, I used around 3 to 4 video tracks. This allowed me to have different versions of the same track and allowed me to anchor each version of the animation so the timing doesn't go off. The highest video clip would be the one that's being shown, and that's how I basically ordered all of my clips. With the video clip on top would be the final video, and the ones below would be the ones that are imperfect passes. Video, audio, export formats. When I exported each version, I used H.264 plus 6 time or MP4. This allowed me to quickly export the video clips without using too much storage, and it would use less RAM when being placed in the timeline. I determined that lossy video compression would be sufficient, as I was not planning to release these videos in formats where this kind of small detail would matter. So it's not going to be shown in cinemas or Blu-ray videos. Resolution and aspect ratio. The resolution chosen was 1920 by 1080, selected due to the popularity and mainstream informational media using this aspect ratio. I did not scale it up, as my computer was struggling already with the 1920 by 1080 canvas, and this saved me a lot of time, as well as having a smaller effect on majority of viewers, so most viewers would not notice any kind of difference if I increased the resolution from 1920 by 1080. Also, I didn't choose any cinematic or square formats because this is, as I said before, this is a informational piece. It's not meant to be cinematic or not meant to be all that visually appealing, like when you compare it to conversations from movies and TV shows. Software applications. DaVinci Resolve was chosen because it is flexible and easy to use. Krita was chosen for 2D animation, as it is very effective and versatile. In my opinion, it can create results quicker than Adobe Animate. For the Corona part, which required a 3D sphere, Blender was used, as it is quick and easy to use, which can create results that I like. As for hardware, I used my laptop. The 8 GB of RAM was the main choke point, as the rest of the parts were sufficient for the project. This was limited as I had no access to stronger devices for longer periods of time. So in the end, this affected how I approached the process, and each of my animation files were around 2 to 3 seconds, as compared to a professional who would probably have each animation clip be longer than 2 seconds. Editing techniques, visual and audio. I simply put the video clips I animated together. I used some fade-ins and fade-outs with the audio. Also, I used a few filters to alter the interview to my liking, mainly the effect on the footage and blurring of the name. I wanted the footage to look altered, not live action. This is because having the transition between animation and B-roll makes things flow a bit better, and it's not incredibly drawing to the viewer every time I change from B-roll to animation to the interview. Editing transitions, visual and audio. I use a fade-in and fade-out from all changes in footage, animated, live action with filter. This made the transitions less jarring when compared to a direct cut. Since I was changing mediums, I didn't want the side-by-side comparison, as this would have made the video look very weird. Text/graphics on screen. This is mainly what makes up my video. In the interview, lower thirds are used to introduce the teacher. The text and graphics are all made by hand. This is done to have a more handmade feel in relation to the subject matter, and aims to look like a student's notes showing what they have to go through, and all the studying that they do. Soundtrack. I chose a simple audio track that faded out in the second half. I didn't put too much of a focus on it because I wanted my voice and the information to be highlighted and be the main point of the video. Evaluation. I think it was okay, but definitely could have been better. One thing I would change is adjusting the audio clips early on, since in the final stages everything is stuck in place, since the timings of the video and animation have already been completed. This would reduce the number of pauses and ums and uhs I put in my final video. Also, I would try and include a bit more color in the piece. In many shots, it is purely a base color with black and could be very uninteresting for many viewers. Justification and platform. I've chosen to release it onto YouTube and Vimeo. This is because these platforms are slower paced when compared to Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, etc., where people just scroll past a bunch of information, especially in the way that I've portrayed the information. It's quite uninteresting when compared to some of the other content on that kind of platform. Whereas on YouTube, people choose what they want to watch. So if they're interested in this kind of content, then they'll probably get recommended my documentary, and as a result, we'll exposing the video to more people who are interested instead of showing it to people who just don't care at all. Also, YouTube and video are more desktop format video streaming platforms. So the 1920 by 1080 aspect ratio works in favor of these platforms as opposed to Instagram or some others where they use square or portrait formats instead of the 1920 by 1080 desktop format. YouTube and Vimeo are also free to post onto, which is an advantage over some other sites where posting on it would require some kind of cost from the creator and the company in charge of it. Thank you.